Hi and welcome back to Cheeky Crypto. Today guys, we are going to be jumping into the charts, take another look at what has been going on with Cardano and what I think is likely to happen next. As I get into this video, if you do find it useful and informative, hit the like button. I really do appreciate that. If you happen to be new to the channel, why not go ahead and subscribe, tap the bell, select all notifications, and in doing so you will be kept up to date with everything that we do here at Cheeky Crypto. If you haven't yet joined us in Discord, links in the description down below. Fantastic community talking crypto 24/7. It's completely free to join. I don't think you'll be disappointed by what you find, so why not check it out? And whilst you're down there, if you're looking for a little bit more from the crypto space, why don't check out the Patreon services as well? We do a lot more in Discord for our Patreon members, so why not check that out as well? Right, let's jump right down into Cardano, right? So we're on the hourly chart, we are paired up with USDT, and we're on Binance as the data source. Now, obviously, I want to talk a little bit about this this wave one high and the stuff that's kind of been going on here, and then obviously what happened afterwards. Seems to be that some kind of correction, but we have actually kind of just come up pretty much short, just ever so slightly here on this high point, right? We can see that we came up right, find the resistance, and got rejected from it. So I want to kind of show you what's going on here. So obviously this is a complex correction. Essentially, we had 535 and then this complex crash, basically being a 335 crash down here, which is basically just ABC in a little kind of bigger time frame. Obviously, once we got to this low point at about $1.10, a little bit shorter than that, let me just check it, low of $1.10.4, and we started to track up, right? And you know, this was actually not an impulsive move, because we had too much overlap going on here. Essentially, so this was 1-2. This is actually being our wave, or a C wave just at the top here. Then we pull back down again, creating overlap, so we know that's not an impulsive move up. But essentially, all these micro movements that fall inside this gap here, essentially we can just chalk it up as a big A, B, C, right? And we don't have to worry too much about all the micro movements and the micro wave counts of things that were going on, because essentially this is kind of where we are landing here. Now there is a pullback here and a push up, and what's interesting about this is it looks like we should be tracking down. Okay, it looks like there should be some kind of A, B, C move to the downside, right? And I do want to kind of talk about this in a little bit more detail, because it's not necessarily what I'm seeing on this micro time frame right now. So let me just first of all grab this, make sure I get this exactly on the nose there. So this is basically wave one, this pullback, this A wave, right? And just measured that as a 100% of that move. Now, on this pullback that we're currently experiencing and currently looking for a bit of a turn, we can see that there's also a potential here, double bottom like we had to the double top, and a move on up. Now this would take us to 125.6 on the 1-to-1 ratio, and effectively what that would do would move higher than this point. Now this point is a little bit north of the 786 fib level, so I'm going to be a little bit cautious here and just say, you know, if we do push past this area, then our target would be 25.6, and we might go a little bit higher, we might go a little bit lower. But essentially that's kind of what we're looking for after this kind of corrective move going up. But corrective down is kind of what we're looking for, and we're looking for a relatively steep correction overall. But for now, it looks like we might have to push up first, right? And if we do have this go higher than our C wave high, our origin, then essentially what we should look for is this is a big A wave down here, then a B wave up, and then a C wave that comes down lower than origin here, becoming an expanding flat correction. So what I'll do is I'll just quickly show you what that would look like in these early stages here, because, you know, it's something that might play out. There is no guarantee of it, but essentially it looks like this. Now, if I grab hold of a trend line, what you'd have essentially is basically an expanding upward directional trend line, and then also an expanding one into the downside as well. It's almost like a megaphone kind of correction. This is something that Cardano did on the weekly. I can show you that if I just zoom on out here for 1 second. So essentially what you have in this fourth wave correction for Cardano is A, B, C, right? This expanding flat correction right here and down here. Okay, so it's this kind of correction, but just on the hourly chart that we're kind of talking about. So as I come back down into our hourly chart, we just expand this back up again. That is what we're tracking. We're tracking that potential kind of movement. Now, this is one of many different scenarios that could play out, because there is alternatives to this. And the thing that's throwing me the most for this Cardano chart right now is this little set of red candles. It is possible that inside here, we actually just have A, B, C come down and this is a whole separate thing that's going on right now. So if I do grab hold of this again and I transpose it over to those current lows, that double bottom, this shows us with 25. But also we should note as well, if I grab my horizontal ray here and just draw the line there, this 129.3 would be an impulsive trigger point. Okay, so we obviously have our target here for the C wave, but if we were to jump up and we were to start to see this, if we were to hit this point, it basically becomes impulsive to the upside. And again, that would actually then mark potentially the completion of this entirety of this move. All of this could have been a fourth wave correction, and all of this then basically means that that fifth wave goes up here, the first wave comes up here, and we end up in a better position for our for Cardano on the daily chart, right? Because on the daily chart, we were talking about 126.7 and not actually hitting it, right? And we actually fell short of it. It could be that this here is a fourth wave correction that gets us to the impulsive trigger point on our daily chart, to be classifying this as 5 waves, which on our weekly chart would be a wave 1, which means on the weekly chart we would expect a wave 4 retracement, or sorry, a wave 2 retracement, which would be relatively steep. And then we go up into a wave 3, down for a wave 4, and finally get a wave 5 higher. Okay, and again, that would just be on our weekly chart. Okay, so we're actually in the early stages of this, and I think once we actually get this, if we do actually move up into that impulsive move up higher here, and we then start to see this pullback into a wave 2, that's going to be the opportunity if you happen to miss this one down here. Okay, so huge opportunity potentially to come in the future here for Cardano if we were to happen to have missed this. Now, fortunately enough, we were actually talking about dollar cost averaging pretty much this entire drop just here, as pretty much most projects had invalidated some of the downside action during this move up, right? So there was a bit of a FOMO stage, not so much for Cardano, but many other altcoins in this area. So we were basically saying we won't FOMO into that. Instead, what we'll do is we'll buy the dip and we'll enjoy the rewards of it. Okay, essentially that's kind of what we've been looking for. So all that was going on down in Discord and the AMAs and stuff that we do with the Patreon members. So yeah, essentially, this is looking pretty good structure, but we aren't there yet, right? This is all kind of hypothetical, and it's hypothetical because in order for this to happen, Cardano has to reach above 129.3 here or 126.7 within this move to the upside on the daily chart to have that structure. Now, let's talk about probability. We have a stochastic RSI just down here. Essentially, this is actually showing us growth, so we should start to see some growth here for Cardano. Okay, but we are mindful that there is still potential for a collapse and invalidation of all of this structure. Okay, and again, that comes in from that point that we spoke about earlier where we actually have an expanding flat correction. Okay, if that is a possibility, and we should be mindful of it in the same way that this is a possibility, and we should be mindful of this as well. Until we get confirmation of either one of them, these are two theories that could play out, okay? So with the stochastic RSI that can grow, we should see the price of Cardano go up, and it just depends whether or not we stop at that C wave high or that B wave high before we have a C wave drop, or alternatively we push on up into a third wave high here above 129.3. Okay, and that would obviously indicate that we're going impulsive, which would be fantastic for the next correction. Now, on the 4-hourly chart, we've actually got a correction coming. Now, this isn't the end of the world because we could come back up before pulling back down, and that would line up quite nicely with a fourth wave, which would be fine. So we could see that. The 8-hourly chart is not overbought yet, so again, this actually would support us moving up before having a fourth wave correction pulling us back down, or potentially even getting into the wave 2 corrections later on after we actually complete all the waves up. Now, the daily chart has corrected down out of here, and again, we could just bring us back up again before bringing it back down. Alternatively, because we're not talking about massive movements here, we could basically just move it briefly to the upside and then basically bring it back down. And if we take a look at the weekly chart, we're already overbought, so we know that the weekly chart has this correction potentially coming in. Basically that second wave correction that I spoke about, right, which would be all the way down at the bottom here, at least a 50% retracement coming, and that would correct our stochastic RSI on the weekly chart. So essentially, we are talking about several different things, and we're of course talking across multiple different time frames. And when we talk about this second wave correction, this is the weekly correction that's going to be required. But I don't see that happening until first of all we actually push a little bit higher with a fifth wave higher on Cardano. It is still possible at this point, with this being a wave 4 scenario. And in that particular scenario, we actually push up a little bit higher before we pull back down, and that's the weekly correction. Alternatively, we actually just start correcting, right? And we don't reach that high point, we don't go impulsive, and we just have another ABC down. Either way, I think there's a correction coming here, and I think it's going to be pretty impactful on the weekly chart and the daily chart, but I think we've got a little bit of time before that actually happens, okay? Now, the 8-hourly chart, that's fine to continue growing up, and, the same with all of these other ones. So, essentially, Cardano's in a pretty good spot, but two options here of what might happen, okay? We want to be tracking both of these to kind of help ourselves know what is more probable. Personally, I feel that it's really difficult to know what is more probable until we get up towards this upper resistance at about 124.6 and until we get to 25.7. Okay, I'll quickly just mark this up here as our C wave as well. So I'll just draw that one right there. Then I'll just bin that off for a second. So we've either got ABC coming up to this higher range, and then we get rejected. And if we were to drop down lower than this wave 1 high afterwards, that being 122.2, then essentially what you've got there is actually it's 121.9. So let me just remove that down a little bit. 121.9. If we drop down lower than that on a fourth wave correction, it's just ABC. It's not impulsive on the hourly chart, but it would actually be classified as an impulsive move on the daily chart, and that one is the one that really matters. So the wave counts might not line up perfectly as per Elliott wave theory, and again, this is down to the fact that we just do not have the same liquidity as the Dow Jones. It's it's an advantage and a disadvantage because it allows us to be a little bit more relaxed with the expectations of Elliott wave theory within crypto. As long as we follow the general principles and the unbreakable rules, we're good, but do not expect to see absolutely perfectly matching up impulsive structures mapping all the way through all the different timelines, because there's just not enough liquidity in crypto to map it out perfectly like that. But we do start to see these impulsive structures appear on the larger timeframes, and they can map up into the larger timeframes, but eventually they stop mapping, right? Anything lower than pretty much anything lower than an hourly chart becomes very, very difficult for many cryptocurrencies, and some you only really want to be looking at the daily, and even that doesn't work. Sometimes it has to be weekly. So just bear in mind that Elliott wave theory is great, but it isn't designed to be utilized with crypto. Crypto wasn't around when it was devised, and essentially what you've got here is something that was observed within the Dow Jones, which is a highly liquid market, and you need to have liquidity in order to be able to really ascertain what is going on with all this stuff. So yeah, looking pretty good for Cardano at the moment. Obviously, we have the potential downside options and we have the potential upside options. I want the upside options because that cements us in a pretty good position on the larger timeframes. But again, I'm open to the idea of getting a cheaper piece of ADA anytime soon. Again, I have no real personal preference as to which way it goes. I think that it would be nicer for the rest of the crypto community if we actually got the daily chart hitting the impulsive trigger points. That way we can actually then have a nice correction in a wave 2 on the daily chart, on a weekly chart, for example. That would actually allow us then to be confident in what's coming afterwards and a bit more relaxed about the crash that was happening rather than panicking. Because if we only have an ABC up and we have an ABC going down, it creates more questions. So we want to be open to the idea of all of those kind of things. But I think for the community, it would be nicer to actually hit those trigger points to the upside. So let's kind of be a little bit optimistic at this point and see how it plays out across the timeframes. Guys, I'm going to leave the video there. If you have found this useful and informative, hit the like button. I really do appreciate that. If you happen to be new to the channel, why not go ahead and subscribe, tap the bell, select all notifications, and in doing so, you will be kept up to date with everything that we do here at Cheeky Crypto. With all that said, done, and out of the way, I hope everyone has a fantastic day, and I'll catch you all in the next one.